All right, diving into the world of ENFPs today. Should be fun.
Yeah, they're an interesting bunch. Always got that energy, you know?
I've heard they're like the life of the party type.
Oh, absolutely. But there's a lot more to it. So much going on under the surface.
Well, let's unpack it all then, starting with the basics. What does ENFT even stand for?
It stands for extroverted, intuitive, feeling, and perceiving.
Ah, the classic four-letter code. So each one of these, how do they, come together?
Each trait, they're like puzzle pieces, creating this whole picture.
Makes sense. So extroverted, that one seems kind of obvious. They're outgoing, right?
Yeah, they get energy from social interaction, love being around people, sharing ideas.
That tracks. Okay, what about intuitive? I always struggle with that one.
It means they're big picture thinkers, less focused on concrete details and more on abstract concepts, possibilities.
So the possibilities are more exciting than the actual details.
Exactly. They're always looking for meaning and connections, the underlying patterns and everything.
Interesting. Okay. Feeling. Does that mean they're emotional?
Well, it means they're empathetic. They make decisions based on their values and emotions rather than just logic.
Makes sense. So they're definitely more heart-driven than, say, head-driven.
You could say that. They have a strong sense of right and wrong and really care about others.
I'm starting to see why people find them so magnetic. Okay, last one. Perceiving. What's that all about?
Perceiving, it's about flexibility. They prefer to keep their options open, adaptable, go with the flow.
Ah, so not the biggest fans of rigid schedules and plans then?
Nope. They thrive in environments that let them explore, be creative.
Speaking of, one source mentioned these ENFP subtypes. Assertive and turbulent, what's the difference?
Yeah. It's about confidence levels and how they express emotions. Assertive ENFPs, they're pretty self-assured, not as affected by stress or criticism.
But still just as enthusiastic.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The turbulent ones, though, they might overthink things more, be a bit more sensitive.
So same core energy, just different ways of processing the world, basically.
Exactly.
What about weaknesses? Anything stand out in the research?
One that pops up a lot is distraction. They're so open to possibilities, they sometimes jump from one thing to another.
Oh, I know that feeling. So many ideas, never enough time to actually do them all.
Right. And it's tough for ENFPs to prioritize sometimes. So many open tabs in their mental browser.
So that enthusiasm, it's a blessing and a curse. Great for brainstorming, maybe not so great for deadlines.
Exactly. And then there's sensitivity. They feel things very deeply, which is awesome. But it also means they can get hurt easily.
Yeah, got to protect that big heart, especially in a world that can be, well, kind of harsh.
Totally. So self-care is super important for ENFPs. They need to find healthy ways to recharge, protect their energy.
Makes sense. I feel like we're just scratching the surface here, but I'm already fascinated by how complex this all is. So many layers to unpack.
Totally.
It's the quirks that make us interesting.
Exactly. And one quirk that comes up a lot with ENFPs is they can overthink things.
Yeah. Like analyzing every little detail, every possible outcome.
Pretty much. They see so many possibilities, it's easy to get stuck in a what-if spiral.
Makes sense. I mean, they're so future-oriented, always looking ahead. So how do they deal with criticism? Given their sensitivity, I imagine it can be tough.
It really depends. Some ENFPs have developed a thicker skin over time, but others, especially those turbulent types, they take it to heart a bit more.
So how can those sensitive ENFPs handle the not-so-nice parts of life?
Strong support system's key. Having people around who get them, who appreciate their unique qualities.
That makes sense. Feeling understood and valued can go a long way.
Okay, another weakness I saw mentioned was conflict avoidance. Is that a common thing?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Harmony is super important to them, so they'd rather avoid confrontation if they can.
But wouldn't that just bottle things up? Eventually, it's got to explode. Avoiding conflict only works in the short term. In the long run, it could actually make things worse.
So how do they find that balance between keeping the peace and actually addressing the issue?
It's about learning to communicate openly and honestly, even when it's uncomfortable.
So setting boundaries, being assertive, but still respecting that need for harmony.
Exactly. It's a delicate dance, but it's key for any healthy relationship.
Speaking of relationships, it's interesting how ENFPs crave connection, but also value their independence. It's kind of paradoxical, isn't it?
Totally. They need both freedom and belonging. It's that push and pull that makes them so fascinating.
Okay, enough about theory. Let's talk about some real-life ENFPs. I'm ready to see how this all plays out in action.
All right. Let's start with a classic example. Robin Williams.
Oh, he was brilliant. Such a quick wit, and that ability to go from silly to serious in a heartbeat.
Totally embodies that ENFP playfulness and depth. They're not afraid to be goofy, but they also have this profound side.
It's sad, though, that he struggled with depression. Do you think ENFPs are more prone to that?
Mental health complex can't really pin it on personality type alone, but ENFPs, especially the turbulent ones, they might be more susceptible to mood swings just because they feel things so intensely.
Makes sense. It's like their inner world is so rich and vibrant, it can be overwhelming at times.
Exactly. Self-care and support are crucial. Okay, who's next on our ENFP list?
Ooh, let's talk about Dr. Seuss. His books were my absolute favorite as a kid.
Another great example. He captures that ENFP love of imagination, that willingness to break the rules and create something totally unique.
And his stories always had these deeper messages about acceptance and kindness.
Right. ENFPs might seem lighthearted, but they often have a deep sense of justice. They want to make the world a better place.
Okay, so we've got a comedian and a children's book author. This is quite the range. Yeah. It's so cool seeing how diverse this ENFP group is. They really can shine in any field. Okay, so we've covered the basics, the strengths, weaknesses, but what about relationships? The sources mention ENFPs are social butterflies, always craving deep connection. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. They thrive on interaction and emotional intimacy. It's like a core need for them.
Okay, so what are they looking for in a partner then? What makes a good match?
Authenticity is huge.
Yeah.
They want somebody who's genuine, open-minded, willing to be themselves completely.
So no playing games, no surface level stuff. They want that real soul connection.
Exactly. They also love partners who are intellectually curious, who can keep up with their mental energy.
Makes sense given their intuitive nature. Always got to have those deep conversations, the philosophical debates.
And let's not forget that feeling side, they're passionate partners, incredibly devoted and supportive.
So they really go all in heart and soul.
Yeah.
But doesn't that sometimes lead to setting unrealistic expectations?
It can. They might idealize their partner and put them on a pedestal, which can set everyone up for disappointment.
So how do they avoid that trap?
Self-awareness is key. Remembering that no one's perfect and focusing on building a relationship based on mutual respect and realistic expectations.
It's about finding that sweet spot between the romantic idealism and, keeping it real.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about what they look for, but what about compatibility? Any types that are particularly well suited?
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
INTJs are often mentioned as being highly compatible with ENFPs.
INTJs, really? It seems like a total opposite.
It might seem that way, but opposites attract. The ENFP brings the spontaneity, the creativity, the emotional depth, and the INTJ brings the stability, the structure, the grounded perspective.
So they balance each other out, bring different strengths to the table.
Exactly.
Sounds like a recipe for a pretty powerful connection. This deep dive has been so insightful. We've covered so much ground, from strengths and weaknesses to relationships and even humor.
It's amazing how much depth there is to the ENFP personality, right?
Totally. But I'm curious, what can they actually do with all this ENFP knowledge we've thrown at them?
That's the million-dollar question. Well, for ENFPs themselves, I think the biggest thing is self-awareness, right? Knowing your strengths, your quirks. It's like having the instruction manual for your own brain.
So instead of feeling like, why do I always do that, they can start to understand those patterns.
Exactly. Like, okay, I know I get distracted easily. How can I work with that? Set myself up for success.
So it's about playing to your strengths, but also having strategies for those less helpful tendencies.
And for anyone interacting with ENFPs, it's about understanding where they're coming from. Build empathy, better communication.
Our listener might be dating an ENFP, working with one. So what are some things to keep in mind for those relationships?
Well, first off, appreciate the ENFP energy. They're enthusiastic, genuine. They want to connect. It's contagious almost.
But that energy can also be a lot to handle sometimes, right? Like they're off to the races with ideas and you're just trying to keep up.
Patience is key. Maybe gently steer them back on track, break things down into smaller steps.
So work with that energy, not against it.
Exactly. And communication. Remember, they're feeling driven. So validating those emotions, really listening, it goes a long way.
Makes sense. Don't try to logic them out of their feelings. Just meet them where they're at.
Yep. And ENFPs love those deep conversations, bouncing ideas around. So don't be afraid to engage.
I was struck by how idealistic ENFPs are, like they truly believe in the good in people, the possibility of change. It's kind of inspiring, actually.
Oh, absolutely.
Man, this has been such a cool deep dive. We've learned so much about ENFPs from the inside out.
It's amazing how much we've covered, right? And hopefully our listeners walking away with a deeper understanding of themselves, the ENFPs in their life.
And just a greater appreciation for all the different ways people experience the world.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks so much for joining us on this ENFP adventure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep celebrating those unique personalities.